Chair Gensler, I'd like to dive into some of the weeds here on payment for order flow. And I want to frame this in the context of Robinhood because it's top of mind in this hearing, but I think it's more illustrative of some challenges than the specifics for them. Number one, I would just point out that last year Robinhood was paid $65 million in fines for failing to disclose their reliance on payment for order flow as a revenue stream, and 65 million, 65. By comparison, they earned $91 million in payment for order flow revenue in the first quarter of 2020, $180 million in the second quarter of 2020, and $331 million, 5 times the fine, in the first quarter of this year. Now, you weren't at the SEC, and I'm not going to ask you to comment on that, but I would just make the observation that if the pain of the fine is so much lower than the benefit of the crime, I'm not sure it has it has the kind of deterrent property we would like. Now, in our hearing with Mr. Tenev, he noted that their payment for order flow agreements are structured where their revenue is earned as a percent of the spread earned by the wholesalers. Now, leaving the question of payment for order flow broadly aside, that seems to me like a total conflict of interest. The structure of that agreement puts the interests of the wholesalers and the brokers directly at odds with the investors, does it not?
Well, I think you highlight two really important points, if I may. One is that an enforcement regime, we should, I believe, without fear or favor, lean in to individuals and corporations and hold them accountable. And that what you're highlighting is sometimes just a dollar payment doesn't fully address holding companies or individuals accountable and change the behavior in the market. As to the behavior itself, what that finding in that case in December showed is that there was an inherent conflict, that there was the wholesaler saying, well, which way do you want me to go on this? It's either you or the investor. And so that's why I've asked staff. I think that we have to take a holistic look at the market structure and see whether, not only whether customers are really getting best execution, but how the market structure can be addressed to get that, and also address some of the increasing concentration in the markets.
Well, I appreciate that, because again, it's the structure. It's one thing to be paid 10 cents a trade. It's something else to say I'm going to get a percent of the spread. So the second point that Mr. Tenev said in those hearings was that, at least for their options orders, that they only route trades to the 4 firms listed on their 606s that they have payment for order flow contracts with. To my mind, I don't understand how that's consistent with the best execution obligation if you are consciously not even talking to firms who might be able to do this but don't pay you a fee on it. Would you agree that again, I'm talking about the structure of how you implement your payment for order flow, not the concept generally?
I think that you highlight a very good point, that in circumstances where you don't have that, then a broker sort of says, all right, I've got to institute best execution, and goes out and surveys. I think it was earlier, some congressman said it was a horse race, but you can go out and you can kind of say, all right, now I think it was Congressman Foster, but I'm be sure, who can I go out and sort of find the best execution rather than a limited 2 or 3, or in this case, 4 firms that are sending money back to the broker.
Okay, well, I'd like to then just tie this all to the gamification question, because I think all of us on this committee, regardless of party, want to see U.S. investors create as much wealth as possible. And I don't think any of us have evidence to suggest that retail investors, with high trading frequency, come out better than retail investors who, just invest in index funds and are long hold, other than a couple lucky casino winners. And yet that is precisely what gamification is designed to do. And so if you couple gamification with an incentive based on the spread, and you couple that with only funneling money to people who are on the spread, it seems to me like I cannot conceive of a world where you are also fulfilling your best execution obligation. So in the time we've got left, what tools do you have to enforce compliance with folks who are violating that best execution? And can you commit to making sure that the that the fines are commensurate with the gains from the crime.
Well, that is certainly what we're going to lean in to do. I think that without fear of favor, and it's not just about the firms, but individuals, and about sanctions and bars, and when needed to have orders that make sure of that.
Thank you. I yield back.